Hey guys, welcome back to the Max Spence Business Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest. But before I jump into that, if you guys like the content I'm putting out, the people I'm interviewing, please like, subscribe, leave a review. It helps out a ton with the podcast. If you can go over to Apple Podcast and leave a review, that helps out a ton as well. So today's guest is Cameron Roy. I actually had him on a previous episode, episode 37, and we talked about when he got his first apartment building, 120 unit apartment complex. I recommend if you're in the multifamily space that you guys go check that episode out. We talk about all the nitty gritty stuff about how, he was able to do that and how he actually transitioned from, his corporate life to, buying that building. So yeah, a lot of good information from that. But yeah, so today pretty much we're just going to be doing a catch up. He has actually another huge project, another huge building that he just bought, which, we're going to talk about, which is going to be super exciting. But yeah, why don't we jump right into this? It's good having you back on the show, man.
Yeah, brother, it's been a minute, and I really appreciate you inviting me back on.
Awesome. I always appreciate, having you back on, man. But yeah, so why don't we just jump right straight into this? So what has sort of happened since last time we spoke? I know we spoke maybe 8 months ago. a lot of
Yes.
time has passed, but yeah, just a brief rundown of what's been going on in your life, business and, regular life and all that type of good stuff.
Yeah, so a lot has been going on. Let's see. On the business side, um, yeah, made a decision a couple months ago to kind of change my strategy in this space. Just after doing the first property, I learned so much, and a lot that I knew I got to apply in that first deal: underwriting, due diligence, business plan, legal work, accounting work, things like that. And that was awesome. But I learned over time that the thing I enjoyed most about the entire process was raising capital, investor relations. And so I wanted to figure a way for me to just execute on that and add value to people's life. And so I learned about this idea of a fund to funds model, creating a fund. And so for the past few months, I've been doing that with a new business partner. It's been very exciting. And our fund came together relatively pretty quickly in the past few months. And we are closing on our first deal tomorrow, hopefully. I mean, anything can go wrong in this world, but hopefully we'll be closing tomorrow. It's 384 unit property out in Florida. It's just about $42 million purchase. And yeah, we're very excited about that and other deals that we're already looking at, analyzing, considering for our fund. So in the business world, that's what's been going on. Personal world, man, I was on vacation a few weeks ago in the Caribbean, which is amazing, with my wife and her family. Just I live in Texas, so COVID restrictions have gotten way, way, way less. It's kind of hard to find people with masks these days, so feel a lot more sense of freedom, kind of back to normal as much as we can, and just trying to live my life one day at a time and add value everywhere I go.
Awesome. So yeah, the first building you got was the 120 unit building, and I believe that was syndicated, right? That wasn't with a fund.
Correct. I didn't know about the fund model at that time. Actually, that's not true. I knew about it, but I didn't know anything about it. I just kind of heard about it, knew the term, and really didn't know much about it. But that was syndicated, and yeah, so that one was out here in Dallas, and now my business partner and I are doing a fund. I have a
Oh,
new
okay.
business partner. He lives in Virginia. Great guy. Met through a mastermind I'm a part of. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Have you come across a guy called Bridger Pennington?
Yeah, I know who he is. I don't know him personally. I've never talked to him or spoken to him, but I know exactly what he does, and that's essentially what I do as well.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah. I actually had him on the podcast a couple months ago, but yeah, he was talking about the fund stuff and the difference between syndication and funds, which I didn't have that much knowledge about. But yeah, so it seems like funds work a lot better with being able to scale, right? Because it's you have that pool of money that then you can just continue to pull from, right? And then you is your fund open or is it a closed fund?
So we consider doing a blind fund, meaning having one fund raising a lot of capital in one year and then trying to deploy that to multiple different deals. But My business partner and I decided to not do that. This first one, we may at some point, it could change. It probably will. I don't know yet. But for this deal, we we created a main fund with our individual holding companies, my holding company, my business partner's holding company, brought our holding companies together to create a fund. And for this specific deal in Florida, we created a fund to raise capital for that deal specific.
Ah, okay, okay, okay. And do you only is it only the one fund right now? And is that fund maxed out with that one property, or with that fund, are you guys looking to get like another, two buildings or three buildings? Like what's sort of the plan with the fund that you have right now?
So that fund is specifically for that deal in Florida. So that was
Ah,
essentially closed. But working with our attorney, our legal team, making sure that we're always doing things, knowing what we're doing, managing our expectations and investor expectations. Um, you know, we're considering now just creating a fund with no deal in sight, the blind fund. But we're also considering staying to how we are. And because if you do that, you run the risk of raising a lot of capital, but not really finding a deal you like or trust to put capital into, then you have to return it after a year.
yeah.
So we are, we have a lot of friends in this space that we want to support that we know are good operators and find good deals and run excellent properties. They're getting good deal flow and we want to come alongside them and help with their capital needs. Um, and so we're vetting their deals with them. And if we decide to pull the trigger on one and move forward, we'll create another sub fund and it'll be for that property specific if
Ah, okay,
we don't
okay.
do a blind fund.
So as your bit, like, I know that you talked about at the beginning here, your business model sort of changed from like like buying, like going to buy the property, and I guess like it's sort of similar but a little bit different. But have you guys sort of changed your business model to more like a private equity type of fund where you raise capital and then like people would come to you and say, hey, I have 250,000 and I want to get in some of these real estate deals, but I don't really know where to start, and I want to hand it to somebody that I know like knows what they're doing and they have experience in and they know what to look for in good deals? Is that what you guys are doing right now, or is it like a little bit different? Or
It's exactly right. That's what we're doing and what we're trying to build. So you hit the nail right on the head, man. That's what we're doing.
Oh, okay, awesome, awesome. Okay, yeah, that's actually super interesting. And with that right now, is it just you and your business partner that are just doing the private equity fund?
Yep, it's just us. Our fund is called the Common Good Fund, and we'll raise money. And like I said, it's in the beginning stages, so we're still trying to really figure out: do we want to go down the path of creating a blind fund, and people give us money without a deal in sight, looking and analyzing, or do we want to wait till we know there's a deal in sight and then raise capital for it? So we're still deciding these things, but essentially, yes, that's what we're doing is private equity.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah, that's actually super interesting. Yeah, and like you guys are at the beginnings. Like, well, I mean, you're closing on a $42 million property, so I mean, a little bit above like the beginning stages. But yeah, like you're saying, you're still like figuring out what exactly it's going to look like, right? But sort of
Yeah.
jumping into that property right now, how like what made you choose to go into Florida?
The reason everybody's going to Florida right now, man. Everybody's moving to Florida and Texas, I feel like, in Arizona. And it's a phenomenal property. And the previous owners they just did a great job with owning it. And the connections we had to the owner were just bizarre. One of those crazy things is like, how did this happen? But we're thankful it did. And specifically the properties in Daytona Beach. And the reason we like that area is because it's very affordable for people to live. And there's a lot of growth there economically as well. But there's a lot of people that are living in Daytona commuting to Orlando for work because Orlando is getting very expensive to live in. It's getting priced out. And so as people are living there now or moving in there, they want to maybe live right near the beach, somewhere that's more affordable than maybe where they work in Orlando, but have maybe, 45-minute commute to work. They don't mind. Well, they're moving into and living in Daytona Beach. The property is just it's a home run in our opinion. It's already been greatly occupied for a long time. It has bigger square footage than a lot of Class A around it, with a lot less rent per square foot. So just lots of room to grow the income in that property as well. So those are a few things that kind of just made the most sense for us to really take this one down.
Okay, okay. And so like talking about that a little bit in deeper detail, like so I'm interested to sort of hear like how did you sort of find that property? And then speaking about previously before you found it, like how many deals were you looking at before you actually, sort of found that home run? Because I've spoken to other like multifamily real estate investors, and like a lot of them actually don't do that many. Like you think like, oh, they're like they do a lot of deals, but actually like they don't do that many deals. Like well, I mean, it's different for different people, right? But I was just talking with one guy, and he like I think in 2020 he did like 5 deals, right? But he looked at like 500 or like 700 deals, right? And then like underwrote like 200 of them, and then put offers in at like 50 or something, right? So it's like a huge
Yeah.
process, and a lot of people think like, oh, I'm going to go out tomorrow, look at the first multifamily property, and it's going to be like a home run. So can you give like a little bit of perspective on like that type of, that sort of area of like finding deals?
Yeah. And I don't remember too much, Max, about what we talked about when I was on last time on your podcast, but it goes to this principle of like established really good relationships with people. So since I've been doing this, my relationships with people have gotten me further than anything else. Even though I've learned a lot, I've done a lot, relationships. So the lead sponsor on this deal is actually the guy who I partnered with in the first deal I did here in Dallas. So I already knew him. He's a friend of mine. I've done a deal with him, great relationship. He found the deal and he knew about it. And, he kind of just knew, or he's the guy who knew the previous owners, and all the stars aligned. And we had a conversation about the property. And it was at the time that my new business partner and I were creating our fund. And we are like, dude, we love the deal. It looks great. It makes sense. Congrats for you. And we want to come alongside you with our fund and help support this deal as well. So we found it just by virtue of me knowing
Mm-hmm.
the guy who, is the lead sponsor and being friends with him in this space.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah, that's actually super interesting. So now talking about like, because you're like you're pretty much company's like expertise is like raising capital and vetting deals, right? So talking about more on the raising capital side, like what type of like what's your ideal like client customer that you're looking for, or client that you're looking for, and how do you guys go about like what sort of like practical sources do you like? Do you guys use social media to raise capital? Do you use like I saw one of your videos, you're talking about webinars? Is it like coffee meetings? Is it all of these like, or like are you guys like sort of specific things that you do a lot of, if that makes
Yeah,
sense?
it does make complete sense. And we're fine tuning it right now as well. And really figuring out that avatar person. But ideally for us, we talked about this idea of 50 for 50 for a while. And I think we're still entertaining that. Our goal would be to find 50 investors who, for the next 5 years, could invest $50,000 a year. That's $2.5 million a year in capital. And we say 50 because that's the minimum investment into our fund. We require $50,000 minimum, but we are sourcing that a lot right now through just people that we already know or have relationships with, whether it just be personal or through social media or some other avenues that you're bringing in, people to your world. But we are working on it right now. We just closing on this property. So the past month or 2 months for us have been hectic getting this property done. We're going to spend the next month working in the business, and really fine tuning those systems and processes for gaining attraction for potential investors, communicating with them, trying to let them know who we are, what we're doing, seeing if it makes a good, if we're a good fit for them with their investment dollars. But it's going to be someone who, would likely be able to do investments annually, because we're at the point where we're going to be sourcing multiple opportunities every year now.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. So, and speaking about this property in particular, like what is your like team sort of plan, with that property, and who's sort of involved with that property? So you have like the sponsor, who I believe would be like the general partner, who's like managing more of like the day-to-day operations of that property, or I might be wrong with this. And then you guys are managing like the investor relationships, making sure that they're like okay, or like like everything's sort of flowing, and they're up to date on what's happening with the property. Is that sort of correct, or am I way off here?
No, it's pretty correct. So the current property management is so excellent that we're keeping them on. A lot of times people come in and replace them. We don't need to. They have traditionally gotten their capital from Wall Street. So this is institutional level investors and property managers. And we were so impressed with the extreme detail in reporting. I mean, everything from potential jobs tenants might be getting that we want to leave them on, and we're going to keep them there to manage the property and all the reporting and all the updates with capex plans, things like that, and have them on site. We're managing our own investors, their expectations, making sure that they're aware, and we're on the GP team as well. There's a handful of us who collectively took this deal down together, and we're all on the sponsor team, and we're all responsible for managing our own investors.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, that's actually super interesting. So it's like, it's not like, let's say like one, like, I mean, it's not like Blackstone coming in by buying the property, but it's like, it's like you guys are like partnering together, right? With like, two or three other, like different, like people with different experience levels in different areas of like, the project. And then you guys are all coming together and like building, like, doing the one team to like get that project done.
Exactly.
That's actually super interesting. Would you like, I don't know if you're able to talk about this, could you talk about the structure a little bit more, like, who's involved with it, like how did you sort of find those people, and all, like how did you sort of structure, like I don't know if you can talk about that, but I mean like just sort of like talking about it a little bit more detail, like how it's sort of structured.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like with the model, the fund to funds model is, um, excuse me, we're coming in together with a group of people that we have relationships with and we know, like, and trust, and we can come in with our fund. And the cool thing about a fund is it's seen as one LP, one investor. So my fund, mine and my business partner fund, that we have multiple investors in the deal, is our fund, not our individual investors. And so it's one limited partner through our fund. Now we're responsible for making sure our investors get everything they need, the documents, their K1s each year, anything that they would need as a passive investor. That's our responsibility, mine and my business partners, for our investors. But we are not responsible for everyone else's investors because we all have funds in this deal. I'm liable for my guys because I'm the managing partner of my fund. But we collectively have all brought our capital together through funds and to take down this property. And so, yeah, I mean, it started out just as friendships and relationships and more knowledge in this industry and how we can do more together.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Now, sort of talking about your own, like your guys' business right now. Like, what are your guys sort of plan? Like, I know that you were saying that you guys have sort of been stuck in the trenches for the past like couple months getting this deal done, right, and getting this sort of property done. What are you sort of focusing now on with your business, and why are you focusing on it?
Yeah, we put our business together in like 3 weeks. We didn't have a lot of time and we rushed and we got it done and it was awesome. And there was just so much, T's to cross and I's to dot. And we have a phenomenal, attorney that works with us and makes sure that we're compliant every way, and doing things as we should be doing them. Because we're not the law experts, our attorney is, and he's awesome. So what we're doing now, since we're about to close this property tomorrow, is kind of like I said earlier, we're going to spend probably the better half of this next month, all of July, working in our business, really fine tuning our messaging, our avatar investors, the systems and processes that we'll be using to manage investors, create online portals for them, get them information consistently, and also find and figure out and execute on the best way that we believe will draw us to potential investors versus, just shotgunning out a lot of information and hopefully something sticks. Getting very much of a sniper approach and getting specific on those investors that we want to get in front of, how we're going to get in front of them, and then let's execute on that. So that's what we're going to be doing probably for the next 4 weeks, is focusing heavily on laying out those building bricks of our business and then move forward.
Oh, okay, okay. So like right now, you guys are focusing on building those systems up, so you don't have to do like catch up with like when you get the next property and stuff. Like they're already there. Like you guys have your website, you have like all the systems and processes in place with like your investor portal, and you have like all the information about like like you were talking about like the specific forms you have to send to them, and then that's all sort of set up. Because like like when you're telling me that like you guys set that up in 3 weeks, I was like, that must have been insanely stressful, and like awesome job on your part of actually
It
like getting
was.
that done, in like 3 weeks, and managing this deal and like raising the capital and all that stuff. Like that must have been crazy stressful. But
Yeah.
like congrats to you guys for like pushing through that, and actually instead of just being like, oh, we'll leave this deal and go to we'll look at the next one. You guys are like, no, this is a great deal. We don't want to pass this up. So I absolutely love that.
For sure, man. It was stressful, but we
Yeah.
did it, and I'm glad it's over and on to the next. Like we're ready for the next. Let's get after it.
Awesome. So after those 4 weeks, actually, sorry. So like with your business right now, like how are you guys like sort of like with the consistency and like all this other like, actually, sorry, I'm going to rephrase that question. But talking about consistency and,
Yeah, you're good.
you, yeah, you came from, corporate background, and now it's like the work from home, and I think a lot of people would get value from that, is like being thrusted into the work from home lifestyle. Like I believe that you work from home as well. How do you stay consistent with like all the distractions and all that type of stuff, and how do you structure your week that you're able to stay consistently moving forward and not being like stagnant?
Yeah, oh, man, great question. It took me a long time to really figure out a good rhythm for myself in that. It's kind of this idea of like anything worth doing today is not worth putting off till tomorrow. And there's so many things that you have to do today in your business, or just on a daily or weekly basis. And the best thing that helped me was starting to write these things down. So I would think, okay, what do I have to do this week? Maybe I need to send this email to our attorney. Well, when's it going to get done? And if I don't write it down and actually have a planned time slot at some point in the week, it's going to be Friday at 4:30, and I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, I got to email my attorney, and it could disrupt what I'm currently doing, a commitment already made, or I just dropped the ball entirely. And so really getting, disciplined with your calendar in the week, writing to-dos. I have a goals board. I have goals and then goals completed, and I write sticky notes. And so when I complete a goal, I take it and put it to the goals completed side. It just helps me like reinforce the positive feeling of completing a goal to continue, writing things down and
Yeah.
making sure they happen at a certain time. So that's what's been phenomenal for me, at least. It might not work for other people, but that's how I do it.
Yeah. I'm actually super interested in that, because like that's something that I struggle with a bit, is like I'll put it down in a calendar, or like put it into the schedule and stuff, and then sometimes I push it and be like, oh, because like I'm in the feeling of working on this part, right, of the business, but then like you neglect a certain part of the business that needs to get done, right. So it's like trying to balance that, right, and it's just being like having the discipline to be like, this needs to get done, and I've put it in my schedule today, and even though I don't feel like doing it today, like this is going to help move my business forward, and you just need to like sit down and do it, which is something that I'm like trying to figure out, like how can I structure my days to be more productive, right, or like more consistent with like always progressively moving the ball forward. And talking about that, like do you start your days at a certain point, and then do you shut them off at a certain point, so it's not just like this ever, like, because that's something that I noticed for myself, is like I don't start them, like like every sort of day is sort of different for me, but the ending day, it's like there's not like a shut off point, right, so you just have that consistent, like sort of like a little bit of like stress in you, that you're like you can't go like, all right, the day's done, you're just always like there's like you're always thinking about stuff like, oh, I need to work on this, I need to work on this, and it just carries this stress, and I find it just builds up with me, if I don't like shut it off at a certain point. Do you do the same sort of thing, or like how do you sort of manage that part?
Yeah, I mean, you have to make exceptions for yourself, especially in this business. Sometimes there's just things you got to get done that you couldn't get done when you'd hoped you get, finish them up. I start every day the same, wake up every morning at the same time, have the same routine in the morning to get after it. And I generally have a good idea of what my day will look like every day just because I have it planned out. But things could go sideways. More meetings could happen. Meetings could get dropped. Things to get done could not get done or get done sooner than you anticipated. So I wish, maybe I could have a better ending to my days, and not like my days endings are bad. I mean, some days, I can finish at lunch. Some days I'm up at, late in the evening on my computer doing work that needs to get done that day before I go to bed. So every morning's consistent, but it's kind of like we'll see what the afternoon brings beyond my schedule.
Ah, okay, okay. And talking about that, the morning, do you find like having that morning routine of like the set things that you do really, really helps you? And like if like let's say you wake up one morning, you miss your wake up time, you don't do your morning routine, do you just feel like your day is just like sort of off and you're like misstepped for like
100%.
the rest of the day? Ah, okay, okay.
I mean, even just like I was saying, I got back from vacation from the Caribbean a couple weeks ago. And when we were on vacation, I didn't set my alarm one morning. My wife and I, we slept in. We ate whenever we wanted to, and we went to bed different times each night. And it was awesome. I mean, that's the way to vacation in my mind.
Yeah.
But when I got back, we got back in the middle of the week on a Tuesday night. We got back at our house almost midnight, and I had a lot to do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I was so tired from vacation. I just did not wake up on time. My alarms went off, but I snoozed them. And the rhythm of the rest of the week for me was thrown off. I just couldn't seem to get things going. But it was because there was a big disruptive pattern in my consistent routine in the mornings. And I'm back at it now. It's been great. But man, like that can really mess with my entire day is if there's no consistency to the way I wake up.
Yeah, 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 100%. And I feel the same way. And I know a lot, like a lot of people are different. Like some people are like, I need to wake up at like 5 or 6 in the morning. Like that works for me. And then there's other people that are like, they wake up at like 9 or 10 and then they work into the night, and like their night hours are like the most productive because, like that's just how they work and they feel like a lot better. I'm sort of the other way where I like my mornings are so productive. And then I sort of find like as the day goes on, it's like slowly losing like a little bit of steam by the end and stuff, and it's just like gets harder to be like, okay, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do this. But yeah, so we're talking
Yeah.
so we're talking on that point a little bit more. I saw one of your videos that I thought was really interesting, was talking about like trusting the process, right? And it's like, like when you first start a business, or maybe you're trying to achieve something at the beginning stages, it can be months of it just feels like you're just like grinding, and there's just like no sign of like progress, right? Or the progress is so small, right? And like, a lot of times like maybe you're just like a little short of like that finish line of, or seeing that huge progression hit. And how do you sort of stay through that and sort of move through that when you're working at, like, let's say when you're trying to find a deal and it's like you're looking at, like, you've looked at 80 deals already or 100 deals and you're just like, dude, none of these deals are working for us. Like we need to, like, like, I don't know what's happening. And like, how do you stay like consistent to the process?
You have to believe that the consequences of not staying on the process are worse than staying on the process. I
Hmm.
heard this football coach recently talk to his team about uh, winning, and it's like winning doesn't care about you. Winning doesn't care how you feel. Winning doesn't have any regard to you trying to win, and it can it just doesn't care about you at all. And he said, so you have to consider the consequences of what it would take to win and the hardship of winning. And if you don't want to do it, fine. But just know that if you don't ever try and get on the path to win, you will always be a loser. And, it's this idea of like success and no success. It's like, well, maybe I'm feeling discouraged because I've been on the path for a long time. I thought things would click sooner than they are. And there's just no clear sight for victory or success, whatever, in line for me. But you can assure yourself that stopping the process, there will never be a finish line of success or victory for you ever. It's just stuck where you are, back to where you came from. And so for me, like it took 21 months from the time I decided to do multifamily real estate to the time I got my first deal, almost 2 full years. And I thought it was going to take like 9 months when I started. Not the case at all. But I just stuck with it, man. And especially when you start getting tastes of small wins and then a big win, it's easier to start trusting the process. The process may get harder or easier, but it's easier to start trusting the process. I mean, I know you heard it, and probably all the listeners have heard it too, but it's kind of like going to the gym. If you go to the gym all the time and you start losing weight or getting really strong or start having a lot more endurance, you don't notice that overnight, but it's incremental, um, consistent change over time repeated is virtually unstoppable. So believing that the small things you're doing daily will eventually get you where you want to be, but you just never know the timeline, which is the unfortunate thing. Because if we did, everybody'd be major successful in this life.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Something that I've noticed is, you're doing really well on social media. I see like you're doing like the LinkedIn sort of like, putting out consistent content with like video form and written form. And then, also sharing like great pieces of content. So how is what made you decide to start doing that? And how has it sort of affected your business? Have you started to see results, or are you still like in the process of like building it, and your plan is like, hey, I'm expecting to see like results in 4 to 5 years?
Yeah, I started doing that because, I whenever I analyze my life, the history of it, just the place that I seem to have thrived the most, enjoy the most as well, is getting to encourage people and helping them, offering them, maybe a insight to something that they could use insight on, or see something they didn't see that could provide value to them. And I've just really enjoyed doing it. A lot of my content doesn't have anything to do with real estate at all. And that's okay with me because the vast majority of people that are going to see my videos aren't interested in know anything about real estate, but they do know about hard times. They do know about suffering. They do know about, you know, discipline or trying to become disciplined, or how to think through hard situations. And the goal of my life is to help people reach their greatest potential. I really believe that's why I exist. And, if I limit the content I put out to only be valuable to real estate folks, I'm removing the opportunity for a lot of people around me to hopefully gain some value from something I might have learned or have gained insight on that they could, utilize. And so, yeah, I love doing that. I love helping people. I get a lot of feedback too, messages or just, comments from people like, this is great. I enjoyed this, or this helped, or keep it up. And so for me, that's just kind of a green light to keep doing, what I'm doing. And nothing is original. Like, I'm not sitting down outside thinking of the next greatest like philosophical wow thing. It's just things I've learned or am learning and want other people to know about because it could help them like it's helped me. And I have gained some investors from it. I always do touch a little bit too, sometimes on real estate, what I'm up to, how I'm doing it, what's going on in my world. And they're just interested, like, hey, I seen what you're doing. I'd love to know more. Like, what's going on? What kind of business are you doing? Or how are you buying apartment complexes? Um, so yeah, my content mainly is just for me wanting to help people.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And like that's something that I sort of saw from your content. I was like, yeah, there's a lot of like good pieces of advice just on like, like self-help of like how to be more productive in the business world, like, and all the little nits and like little tidbits of information that you've learned that are actually really valuable. Like when you explain them. Another thing that I saw that I actually liked, and I thought was like a really good idea to like sort of like if you're nervous about getting started into social media, and like you maybe you have a little bit of shyness of like putting yourself on camera, or writing, or you're like, where do I start with this? One thing that I saw with you that I actually really loved is like you supplement your content with like other people's like videos or content that is like really really good, right? So you share like other content, which I thought was like, oh, it's actually a brilliant idea, right? Because like sharing other people's content that's helped you might actually help somebody else who's never seen it before, right? So by following your account and they see like this great life advice or business advice or sales advice or marketing advice that maybe they never would have come across if they didn't have you in their connection. So I thought like, oh, that's actually a great way of like maybe getting started, or supplementing your income. Is that like, was that sort of like the plan? Like, did you sort of have like a social media structure, or did you just start like, you just went in and you just sort of like, I'm gonna have fun with it, and like, let's just see what happens?
Yeah, I had no structure. I wish I had more structure. It might help me more. But I've just kind of, a lot of the things that I put out there, are just unstructured and kind of off the cuff. If I learn something that week, I think, okay, well, how can I say it in maybe, a minute and a half to 3 minutes that makes sense for people that could help them? And I'll record on Monday or Friday or whatever, or just whenever. But man, I'm all about sharing good content. Like there are a lot of guys and girls that I follow that write great things or have put out content that's, can truly help somebody if they're going through something that, the advice applies to. I have no problem sharing other people's advice at all, or wisdom or insight. I think it's a great thing. If I'm getting value from it, why would I not want anyone else to? I was at a conference here in Dallas a few weeks ago, about a month ago actually, and John Maxwell was there, and I actually got to meet him. I put this out in a video. I got to meet him. He signed a book. I shook his hand twice, got a picture with him, and one of the most valuable things he said was this. He said, "Everywhere I go, I see people of value that I seek to add value to because I am a person of value." And it was just this value statement of they are valuable. I want to add more value to them. And the reason I can do that is because I'm valuable. It's knowing self, believing you're valuable yourself. And that's just kind of my whole philosophy. He summed it up in words is everybody deserves to be treated well. Everybody deserves to, have value added to their life. And you're a person of value who can add it to them. So do it. Put out a video, open the door for somebody, pay for somebody's dinner. You see a single mom with, a couple kids, and she just looks like she's been having a hard time. Pick up her tab. I mean, there's so many ways every single day for us to add value to people's lives, more than just me putting out videos. So that just
Yeah.
kind of bleeds through in my videos.
Yeah, 100%. I actually love that a lot. And yeah, so we're going to be coming to the end here shortly. I got a couple more questions for you, and sort of like this is the
Yep.
ending segment. And so, a question I want to ask you is, what is one question you wish people asked you more?
One question I wish people asked me more was, who do I think the greatest leader who ever lived was?
Who's that?
Uh, I think Jesus Christ.
Ah,
I don't
okay.
think anyone's had more of a worldwide impact, whether you believe him or not, or you have a faith in him or not. I don't think there was more of a better leader with more of a lasting impact than that man. So I wish people asked me that more.
Yeah.
Um, that's
Yeah.
a good question you asked.
Yeah, well, actually, I actually saw it on another podcast. This is bad, but I mean, like, I can't remember the podcast, but I saw that one part where the interviewer asked that, and I was like, this is absolutely brilliant. Like, I was like, it's such a good question to ask, right? Because it's like, as an interviewer, you're asking questions, and sometimes, like, like this, I've sort of had conversations with people I've interviewed afterwards, and maybe they wanted to say something, or they wanted to talk about something particular, that they didn't bring up because it wasn't asked in the interview, and they didn't want to sort of break the flow or anything like that. So I was like, that's a great way to sort of add that sort of ability in there for, like, let's say if somebody's, during the podcast, they're like, why is this guy not asking me about this? Like, like, this is something that I think would be so valuable, if people heard about it. Right. So yeah, so I
I
love that.
love that, dude.
Yeah.
So true.
Now we're sort of talking about another sort of segment that I sort of saw again. Was with Gary V. I don't like, he sort of made it a little bit popular, and this is what I've sort of seen is like the underrated and overrated sort of opinions about stuff. So, what is something that you think is overrated about multifamily, and what is something that is underrated about multifamily?
That's a good question too, man. You got good questions. Something that's overrated about multifamily. I think that it's this idea. I talked about this on another podcast I was on recently, is that you need to say yes to everything. It's like somebody puts a property under contract or is a part of a syndicate or, helped in some way in a deal. And all of a sudden they're a pro that you need to pay, $50,000 a year to coach you. Not a chance. And it's cool what they've done. But when you first get in this industry, you could make the mistake like I made and think that you need to say yes to everything. And I think that I've even said that on a podcast before, like say yes to everything. Now, granted, you need to be selective and you need to say yes to things that you'll get value out of, like happy hours, meetings, conferences, relationships, business partnerships, whatever. But you don't need like to be a part of 10 masterminds and, spread yourself thin and go to every conference. And it's not necessary. What's necessary is executing, finding deals or finding money, putting them together and getting things accomplished.
Hmm. Ah, okay, okay. And what's something that you think is overrated um, about multifamily?
Well, I think that what I
Oh,
said is
I'm
the
sorry.
overrated part.
Ah, okay, okay.
Underrated.
And then the underrated. What piece of advice do you have for that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, what's underrated that's not talked a lot about, but you see it come through in people's success or failure is discipline with like scheduling. Like you, you have to have your schedule and your calendar up to date all the time. Know when you're meeting, know when you can meet, know who you want to meet. And if you have to cancel meetings, you have to be able to follow up and reschedule it. Um, but a lot of things get dropped. A lot of um, calendars are just so not organized. And, especially when you're dealing with investors, they may think if you can't manage your own 12 hours in a day, why would I trust you to manage my $100,000 investment? And, you've got to get disciplined about some things that most likely a lot of people are not disciplined in. And time management and calendar management is one of those that's not talked about.
Yeah, 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 100%. Like making sure that you're scheduling things in. And when you say, I actually that's actually funny that you bring that up because like I had another guy on, and he has like he has I can't remember how he what he called it, but it's like his promise list. Yeah, I think it might be his promise list. So like when he
Yeah.
has like a conversation with somebody, he's like, and he says, I'm going to do something. He says, hey, I'm putting this, like, whatever he says is like, hey, I'm putting this on my promise list. So like, this is going to get done. Right. So I'm going to make sure that, like,
Wow.
let's say they need to follow, he needs to follow up with an email, or he wants to, do an introduction to, to two people or whatever. He calls it his promise list, and he just always makes sure that, he gets that done, whatever it is. And he's sort of true to his word of
Very
saying,
smart. I like it. I'm going to adopt it. It's a good thing to do. It sounds like.
yeah. Awesome. Awesome. And sort of the last question I have here, I believe you have kids, right?
No kids,
No
just my
kids.
wife and I and our great little dog.
Ah, okay, okay. Or I don't know. This we can cut this part out if it sounds weird, or I don't know. But like, are you planning on having kids?
Yeah, we are. We would love to have a lot of children. Like I think about the highlight of my life, and it's not yet. I have this image of me being an old man in a hospital bed, taking my last few breaths, being surrounded by my wife, a lot of children, a lot of grandchildren, and Lord willing, great grandchildren, community of friends. And, I want to have children and be good to them and raise them up well and have grandchildren. Some of the most happy, fulfilled older people in my life that I've ever met are those who um, have kiddos and grandchildren. And so
Ah,
we
okay,
definitely
okay.
want children.
And okay, awesome, awesome. And speaking about that, like when, like, what what sort of life lessons and business lessons do you sort of want to teach them? Like, let's say when they're in, like, do you have any ideas right about that right now? I don't know if you do or don't, but like, let's say this is sort of going out to like the teens and 20-year-olds, like, when your kids sort of hit that age, or maybe before, like, what do you want to teach them about life, and what do you want to teach them about business that can sort of help set them up for the future?
Yeah, I mean, I have some great dads in my life, my friends that maybe dads or whatever that I'm in good communication with or community with, and you can't always drill into a kid what you'd hope to drill into them, and they're just going to be their own person. But if you can teach kids some things, I'd want to teach them like my grandfather, my hero in life. He used to tell me, always give a man more than he asks for. Just being overly generous, truly following up on your word. And if you say you're going to do something, you do it. Um, and this idea too from the Bible, like, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? Like, would you be willing to sacrifice the good character that you have or that you could have for the gain that the world could offer? And I see a lot of people do that. I'm sure you and I could probably list off 100 people that have done that. We'd think, But man, I've seen a lot of miserable, depressed, suicidal millionaires and billionaires in this life. And we were made for relationships and community. So I really would love to instill in my kids by watching my wife and I just go all in with the friends and community and family we have around us more than the business that I have.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, like, and I love that a lot. And I had another guy talking about that a bit on the podcast, was talking about like, he, like when he was growing up, he said like he didn't have like, he wasn't rich with money, but he was rich with life. And he
Yep.
was always thankful for that with his parents, right? Like, you know, maybe they didn't have the money to like do all the, you know, crazy stuff that all the other kids could do, but his parents, like, he just had these great experiences growing up. And he just said like he was overwhelmed with like wealth and like richness of just life as a young kid. And it had nothing to, it had no correlation with, you know, wealth or anything of that nature, right? He had a great relationship, and, you know, and yeah, and that was just something that he said. But yeah, I know we're
Amen to
coming to the
that.
end here. It's been an absolute pleasure, you know, listening to you, Cameron, and sort of hearing about the updates. You know, I would love to have you back on, let's say in another like year or 2 years, to see like what's happening. It's always really exciting to see these updates and sort of see like the trajectory of like how your business is coming along from like 120, you know, unit property that was like 9.2 million to now like a $42 million property. So yeah, I'm very excited to say like, oh, is the next property going to be like, you know, $120 million property or something
Potentially.
that gets to that point, right? So it's going to be really exciting to sort of see that journey, and I hope the viewers and listeners are, you know, are as excited as I am to sort of see that journey for you unfold, you know, and being able to document it on a podcast in video format.
Man, I appreciate that so much. And I love the updates as well. And looking back at where people are, it's just always such an exciting thing to do. And so I really appreciate you having me back on. And of course, anytime you want me back on, you just ask, man, and we'll make it happen.
Awesome, awesome. And before we wrap up here, you know, if people want to reach out to, you know, find out more about you, or if they're saying, you know, maybe they live in the Dallas area and they want to put some money into a, you know, some real estate, how can they sort of find out, you know, that type of information?
Yep, you can go to CameronRoy.com, and there you'll be able to find ways to connect with me, or reach out, put some time on my calendar and connect. If you're in Dallas and you want to connect, let's make it happen. You can email me personally at Cameron@CameronRoy.com. Tell me who you are. I get a lot of spam too, so send something that doesn't sound spammy, and let's meet up. Let's go get coffee or lunch or whatever. Let's hang out and get to know one another.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you again, man, for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Max. I appreciate it.